Can you do that? The hotel's getting the exact same soda. They will have no clue. It's the exact same soda.
No, you can't do
They come
it.
and check it.
I'm not saying it's a nice thing. It's kind of.
They come and check it before you go and buy.
Huh?
No, but if they didn't.
Let's say he didn't.
There is
Let's say
a
he didn't.
sensor. You pick
Again,
it
a
up.
concept. You can't ask a question on a story. He got away with it. All right.
Yeah, so that's a really good question because you borrowed it without asking.
What's that called? Stealing. End the story right there. End the story. That's it. You answer the question. You borrow without asking. That's called stealing. End of conversation.
You brought it back.
You didn't bring it back. No, you didn't.
No.
And not only that, and borrow. And by the way, 1 second. If I borrow your car and I bring it back, it's still called stealing.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Even if I put the gas aside, it's still called stealing.
It depends.
But borrowing and bringing it back is still called stealing.
It depends, Rabbi, doesn't it? Suppose he had to have
Everything depends. Yes.
Suppose he was
That's the answer. Yeah.
so thirsty that he had to have some water.
Huh? Sorry?
He couldn't get water and it was in the refrigerator. So,
Say it again.
pikuach nefesh type of thing.
We're not talking pikuach nefesh.
Yeah.
It's not pikuach
That's what
nefesh.
they're talking about.
Okay. All right, we're going to talk about that. Yes. Yes. You must have that Coke. It's pikuach nefesh.
No, not the cook. I'm talking about simple water.
It's not pikuach nefesh.
You have to take some.
I will tell you something. A woman's
medicine.
called me up. A woman's called me up. And this is because years ago, I don't know why she got my number. I don't know why she called me. She goes, Rabbi, I just heard that Three Musketeers now is becoming kosher. I think under OU supervision. I think it's under OU supervision. But in those days, it was just like making the tradition. He said, is that true? I said, I heard that as well. I don't know for sure. I can try to find out for you.
Yeah.
He said, what do you mean? I said, I'll make some phone calls. She goes, no, I need to know now. Pikuach nefesh. I need to know this second.
That's different.
Right. Okay, anyway, yes, you want to say something? Yeah.
Are you familiar with the concept of a public good?
Well,
Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
if I use someone's Wi-Fi, it doesn't destroy the ability of anyone else to use it at the same time.
It actually does.
It actually does.
Oh, it does?
It actually does. It slows down. Okay,
Well,
so I want to get to
radio,
that.
But suppose it did, suppose it had that, it was some radio wave, and if I used it, everyone else could still use it. Does that make a difference in?
So I'm going to get there right now. Okay, so let's talk about that right now. So there is a concept called Zen Nehena V'Zela Chaser. I gain benefit and you have no loss. No, one night I saw, I have no place to sleep. So I go to your backyard and I sleep in the backyard. You find out next morning, you go, I am charging you for sleeping in my backyard. Now assuming you don't charge me, normally you don't charge, right? So the principle is called Zen, I gain benefit, you got no loss. It could be that I don't have to pay for that reason, okay?
But I did have a loss.
Which case?
If you're sleeping in my backyard,
What was
it's
the
not
loss?
telling me.
What's the loss?
That when I find out, it breaks my heart that you're sleeping
That's not cool.
outside where you could come inside.
Oh, okay, right. But it's like the other way around, right? Right, so that's called Zen Nehena. I gained, you didn't lose.
Yeah.
According to many shittas, it's called your putter. Now you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to lechatchili, not go ahead and do that. But if you did that, I can't charge you. There's no license to sleep somebody else's property. But if you did, can you be charged that? So one might argue, and that's the argument I want to make, that listen, it's public good. Basically, I'm getting benefit, but you're not losing. But you were making the argument that maybe there's a loss over here because it's getting slowed down. So here, 1 second. There's an interesting thing. Can you steal something intangible? From the Torah perspective, stealing an intangible is not called stealing. For instance,
Yes,
the Rambam says, if somebody steals a shofar and blows on Rosh Hashanah, again, it's not a nice thing to do, but you yotze the mitzvah. Why? Because you can't steal a sound. I can steal a shofar, and I'm violating Gedei for the shofar, but that the mitzvah is not the shofar, mitzvah is the sound of the shofar, and I can't steal sound, and therefore it's not a mitzvah above Aveira, because the Aveira is not, I didn't steal the sound, so I wasn't doing the mitzvah.
So the mitzvah still counts.
Because you can't steal sound.
Right.
So the Rambam seems to suggest that you can't steal intangibles. I'm not saying that's the be-all end-all, but that seems to be the Rambam's basis. Having said that, there is something called niskei shchenim, which basically means there are certain rules about neighbors. For instance, you can't play extremely loud music if there's certain neighbors. There are certain unwritten rules that you have no right to infringe upon. You can't invade their space. You can't play loud music. So in this case of the Wi-Fi, this might be called niskei shchenim. Why? Because as you pointed out, that in many cases, borrowing someone's Wi-Fi could slow it down. If it did slow it down, it would be an issue. If it didn't slow it down, I'm not talking about now American law. Because American law, you're not allowed to, and then we have a rule called Dine de Lachos Dine. You have to follow the rules of the government. So if American law says you can't, that's a different conversation.
Right.
But I'm saying, if suspend that for a moment,
Right.
it could be if there is no slowing down,
Right.
then it's Zen Nehenes Lachos. I'm benefiting, you're not losing. It's maybe not a nice thing, it's sneaky, everything else. Now, also the argument is like this.
It's like if someone has a fire. and
So
you're cold,
here's a
and you
question.
go over
So
to-
But here, let me
This
just,
is-
what? Sorry, I'm sorry.
And you go over to borrow the heat from the fire, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right,
Yeah.
right, for sure. The other thing is like this. Can I borrow, okay, so even though you're not allowed to borrow something without permission, right? It's
Right.
called stealing. However, there are exceptions. One exception is for a mitzvah. Meaning, the underlying assumption is people would really be happy if you use their thing for mitzvah. So I can actually borrow your siddur and shul. It has your name in it, unless it says specifically "do not use," and you can't. And the old days was an issue because Svarim were very sensitive and it would rip. And today we're not so. You buy another siddur. People not worried. Oh, you use my siddur, it might get ruined. Like, nobody has that kind of feeling. So then the assumption is just the opposite. Adam nicha, a person likes if you're doing stuff mitzvahs with his thing. So. In the case of the Wi-Fi, however, the fact that he puts a password on it means he doesn't want you to use it. It's kind of tantamount the guy writing in his safer, don't use my safer, then hands off. So even if it's doesn't cause you a loss of slowing it down, if I'm putting a password on there, I'm saying do not use it.
That is a great point,
Right.
because there are open hotspots, right?
Right.
And it's totally legal
Right.
because there's no password.
Right.
to
Okay,
get
there
to
you go.
it.
All
One
right.
case I heard this weekend,
Yes.
in Israel,
Yeah.
if you call ambulance, they charge you. If you go in by somebody's house, you see smoke coming up, you call the ambulance, they come in and they say, oops, the guy's making barbecue. Who's supposed to pay, the guy who called or the guy who's making the barbecue?
Why's the guy bargain pay? He didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, this guy was trying to be a nice guy. He
Okay.
thought he's a fire. He
Okay.
knows.
Okay.
Who's supposed to pay?
The guy making a barbecue didn't do anything wrong. But he made a barbecue. I don't see the question.
So the guy who called has to pay?
If that's the rule, when you call an ambulance, you got to pay. Yeah, you made it. You might decide that in society that if people do that, they're going to be reluctant to pay. Society might want to come up with a correcting rule. We have that in the Talmud also. That when witnesses come, right, to say about the new moon. So even though you only need 2 witnesses, but Rabbi Kiva making a point that everybody that came will be questioned and they throw a big kiddush, because if they knew if they came, we wasted our time, they would have come a second time, right? So you kind of do things to make sure people aren't discouraged. You don't want to discourage Good Samaritans, so maybe the rule on the books might be, if you try to be a Good Samaritan, but that's the government decide. But the guy making this barbecue is certainly off the hook.
But on the flip side, let's say it was a real fire.
Yeah.
The guy says, I'm not going to do it. And God forbid, there is a real fire and there's somebody died. So would he be responsible for his death?
Well, again, that you're talking about all of Eish. If I start a fire or I have a fire in my property and I don't stop it from happening, there are laws of Chayv Eish. It's one of the 4 of Nazikin, one of the 4 primary causes of damage. A fire. If you have a fire and you let it go out of control, you're responsible for it. Even if it
Yeah,
goes.
but I don't see consistency, because you say the guy who made the barbecue is not responsible.
Because the fire's not going anywhere.
But on the other hand, if he doesn't call and there's a real fire, because
Who is
said,
he now?
Somebody, doesn't matter.
But
He's
because
on
a real
outside.
fire is raging, right? A barbecue's not going
No,
anywhere.
it's smoke. If there is Ashan, there is Ish, basically. So if this is fire, before it turns into a big thing, God forbid, like what happened in Brooklyn, it was a few months ago.
Yeah.
But, so
So how much of the question is?
my question is, if there is not a real fire, the guy who called, just to be on the safe side, you telling us that the guy who called is responsible to pay for the ambulance fee or fire engine or whatever. On the other hand, if he doesn't call,
Because that's the rule.
I'm not going to take the risk, because why should I pay the fee? It might not be, but if it's a real fire and somebody, God forbid, dies, he will be responsible for his death.
So if there was a real fire, he'd be responsible. There's no
But
real
it's
fire.
it's not consistent.
No, because if there's a real fire, you're right, he'll be responsible. There's no real fire. He's making a barbecue. That's the word. I mean,
No, he's talking about the guy who passed by.
I understand. If I'm making a barbecue,
So-
and it's perfectly safe. And you say, you know what? I'm worried it's going to somehow explode. I'm calling the ambulance. You're crazy for making worry about these things. If I have a barbecue under control and you decide it may explode, and fine. Listen, that's not my
No,
problem.
well, I mean,
All right, let's go on with it. Okay?
So-
Yes.
When two people are talking and you
eavesdrop.
like eavesdropping,
Yeah.
you're listening, that's called stealing, correct?
You're not supposed to. Well, actually, it depends. If they do it in a way that's very clear, they don't want you to listen. That might be a problem. Yes, but if they're doing it in a public space, and it's like I think it's very similar to Gershon. Gershon. If you write an envelope, you write a letter in an envelope, and you seal it, then if you open the envelope, that's tantamount to
Right.
stealing information. If you write a postcard, then you're basically saying it's open for people to see.
Right.
All right, so it might be the same.
So
thing. Let me get.
let's say your neighbor has a fruit tree,
Yes.
right? And the fruit tree is half of it is in your
Oh,
house.
big Shiloh's Gemara. Yeah, go on. Gemara talks about it all the
So
time.
can you pick the tree that is in your property?
Okay, so that's a great question. The Gemara, I think the Gemara says no.
Yes, yes.
No.
Well, it's
If it falls down, it's yours.
Right, if it falls
But-
down, might be yours, right.
But if
I have
it's
to.
still
I have
on
to.
the tree,
Yeah, the trees. Right.
So here is another situation we
I have to
have.
look it up
So
again.
let's
The
say
Gemara-
there is
the
a
Gemara
tree
says-
that's coming to your property and it's this angle. Are you allowed to cut that tree that is coming to your property, that side of the tree, the branch?
That's in your property.
That's in your property.
Yeah, I believe yes. I have to look at the Gemara. I believe yes. I believe
Yeah.
I have to, yeah, the Gemara's
So-
mom is talking about it. I just have to look
So
at it.
so the fruit tree, you're saying you're not supposed
It's not
to.
your fruit. I mean, so why you're allowed to cut it if it's
It's in your property.
yeah, you're allowed to cut it, I think, because it's in
If it
your
falls, you
property.
can. If it falls on your property, you can
Falls,
eat
it
it.
could be because it's hefker and it's a chutzner. I have to double check. Yeah, if it falls, it could be it's okay. I think you're allowed to cut it down if it's in your property getting in your way. But I don't know if you're allowed to take those fruit. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question.
give
So.
that-
I don't have to double
So
check.
we're
on that.
talking about
Gemara talks
Wi-Fi,
that.
right? So Wi-Fi is coming to your property. So anything that comes to your property becomes your domain, becomes your. You know what I mean? If something falls in.
Well, okay, that's true about.
If you're in a public domain, it's not. If and you try to
I don't
tap into
think
that.
that it's true. However, you're right that chutzner, your courtyard acquires you. It's like an extension of your hand, and it acquires you. I don't know if it applies to intangible things. The fact that something flies over your airspace doesn't make well. If it's
So your property you own when you buy real estate, you own anything underneath it,
Airspace.
especially here,
Right.
and anything
no,
above.
no.
Yes, you do.
Well, to a certain degree.
you own airspace. I do. I think
You
you
own airspace.
You do.
But
You
how-
can
how
sell
much-
your
I don't know how
airspace.
high, I don't know how high that goes though.
Right. So let's say
But
in Washington
utilities
D.C.
Utilities
That's right.
have.
Right, they
rights.
have, but in Washington D.C., they say, would you sell your airspace to me because I don't want you to build
Right.
anything
Right,
on
right,
it.
Let me ask you a
So
question.
you sell.
A dog, the neighbor's dog goes into your property.
That's
Does that
that's
belong to you? Can you take that dog now? He's in your property,
Absolutely not. Right.
right?
that's true. But
Right.
that's
So the Wi-Fi
But you
It's
can
not
control
unconditional
you
just
may not
because
be
it
able to.
enters
you
onto
can't
your
control.
property.
What?
It's not
That's
unconditional,
metaltalin.
it's
It's
like
different from
electricity,
contact.
you
I'm
get
like a hubble.
charged for it, right?
Don't have it.
There's a line that's on your property, but it's not, the electrical company
Yeah, and-
obviously has an easement and legal
If
rights.
the
and
Wi-Fi
you pay for it.
is protected, in other words, there's.
If there is a code in it, you're saying you're not supposed to try to.
You break the code, you broke the law.
You break, but if it's free, it's like it doesn't have a password. You may.
Then you could use it, right? That's the way
Right.
the way I understand it, that is public domain.
What's the limit of the Shul Yachid, above your property? I had,
Communication.
how many amah, the different, above that, it doesn't belong to you.
Does that make sense?
No, I'm just-
Remember
همش درباره
hearing
پاراشان
anything like
رفتیم
this?
ومیشپاتیمه
You know,
قانوناست.
because there were no airplanes back in those days.
Rabbi, can I please ask a question here?
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Look up
Yitro,
Coach theory.
Yitro, the Parashat Yitro
Coach
was
wanted to know.
specific.
What?
Well, I had all three
The
babas.
previous
Parashat.
parasha, the
You want to know
Yitro
about
parasha, was
prize for answering the
specifically
question you raised.
for a lot of issues related to Judaism and the creation of the Jewish people. How come suddenly after all of that we jump into these are the laws? I mean, it doesn't seem to be seamless connection.
No, the laws come out of the Serti group.
But no,
these
these
are-
laws
these are-
did not. These laws did not come from the Aseret Diberut.
No, they did. They did.
They
In fact,
did. That's the
I'm not going to get into
connection.
now. That was the first
So
Rashi we learned.
That's the question that they have. How is it connected to the 10?
So Rashi says, the first Rashi we discussed it before we got here, and Rashi points out that these rules were set at Sinai as well. All the halachas were set at Sinai, and this is included in those laws. That's what Rashi says,
So
straight
it's
out.
extension of Yitro.
Yes.
This parasha
Yes.
is the extension of
In
Yitro.
fact, even this parasha.
At the end of Yitro,
Okay.
it's, there are lots
Rabbi
of laws.
Yes,
Foreman
yes.
shows
Um,
directly how they come from.
That is extension of that.
Okay, so one last thing we'll talk about.
Doesn't seem to
The
be
mitzvah,
seamless, you know.
there's a mitzvah in the Torah of Hashavas Aveda. If you find a lost item, you got to return it. Very simple. So here's another example where the Torah kind of gives a different insight. So we know that if you find an item, if you find a lost item, are you allowed to keep it? Not American law, I don't know what it says. If you find his keeper loses weepers, I don't know how much that's law or not law, I don't know. But the bottom line is like this. When you find an item that's lost, so you have to ask yourself two questions. Does it have a siman? Does it have some identifiable mark? Or it doesn't? And the assumption is like this. If it has an identifiable mark, and it's not in a place where it's going to get trashed, so the assumption is that the person who dropped it still has hope of getting it back, and therefore he doesn't give up on it. If it doesn't have any identifiable marks, then the assumption is that, it's an assumption, that he says, I'm not going to be able to prove it's mine, and not only that, I'm not going to be able to find it, and therefore I give up on it, and anybody who finds it is allowed to keep it. That's the basic laws. Okay, fine. So I want to ask you a scenario. If a guy, and that's what this parasha talks about, a Shavas Aveda, returning lost item. If you're in a parking lot, and you see a guy getting into his car, and he drops his wallet, and the wallet goes under the car, so he doesn't see it. And he taps his pants, and he goes, oh my goodness, where's my wallet? Now, we don't have to assume anything. He yells out on top of his lungs, I give up hope. I'm a Yair. I give up hope. He says it, right? No assumption. It's very clear. He drives off. Now you see the wallet. This wallet has every siman possible books, right? It's got his name, his phone number, his social security card, his picture. You can't get more simanim than a wallet. Question to you is, are you obligated to return that item?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
He said he gave
yes.
up.
Wow.
Huh?
He said he gave up.
I was asking you. He gave
Yeah,
up, but he has all the simanim.
Do you believe he really gave up?
He yelled up at top of his lungs, yep.
But what did he give up?
He gave up hope of getting it back.
His identity also?
No, but he gave up the
Driver's
wallet. That's the
license,
wallet. The
these are all
wallet.
of these
He
checks.
gave up. He gave up. He said, I'm never going to find it.
How could-
What's the answer?
What?
What's the answer?
All right. You want the answer so quickly?
Yeah, the answer, yeah.
I mean,
I'll make it work for a little
It
bit.
seems black and white.
if that
But-
happened and I found the wallet, I would consider it immoral to keep it without trying to
Oh,
return
that's
it.
immoral, right? You think immoral, right? Okay.
So regardless of the answer, I wouldn't keep it. I'd
Okay.
try
So
to-
I will tell you the answer like this. The halacha is that since I was miyayish, now yish is not just an emotional state. It's relinquishing an ownership right. Since I gave up hope, I also relinquished my rights to this item, and therefore I, the finder, is allowed to keep that wallet. However, what you said was very true. Any moral, decent person would say, you know what? Come on. You know exactly what belonged to you. You see where it fell. You saw the whole scenario unfold. Of course, you should feel morally obligated to return it. But here's my question. Normally, we would expect the Torah law and morality should be dovetailed together. You know what I'm saying? Torah law says, no, you don't got to. Morality says you have to. That seems counterintuitive, right? Shouldn't the Torah be right on the side of morality? Shouldn't the Torah right? And here I'm saying the Torah says you're not obligated to return it. But you're saying more. I should feel morally compelled. Why would the Torah force that upon us to feel morally compelled? So here's what I want to share with you. And this again, every Jewish law, and Mishpatim laws especially, there's a deeper philosophical underpinning that the Torah is trying to share with us. And what is that? If I build a car, I build it. I spend 10 years building it, and then I spend 10 years driving it. I love every minute of this car. It's gives me such pride and joy. And then I sell it 10 years later. Do I have any relationship with that car now that I sold it? I mean, mostly I might feel great about the car, but I have zero
Right, I
legal
understand.
connection to that car. I have zero. That's it. Done. I built with my bare hands for 10 years. I love it every which way, but once I sell it, nothing. Okay.
Right. You sold it.
It's
You
gone.
got money
Right,
for
so, got money for it, it's done. Okay.
Provided you provided.
Hold on a second. If the Torah would have said that you're obligated to return that wallet, the Torah would have been teaching us a lesson that's totally opposite of Torah philosophy. Let's tell you what I mean. Let me use a very ghoulish example. Let's say you didn't lose your wallet. Let's say, don't ask me a question on the story. By mistake, you chopped off your pinky.
Right.
All right? And now your pinky's going someplace, you go, oh, I'm never gonna find my pinky. And somebody found your pinky. It's still your pinky, because that's you. That pinky. You can disown something you own. You can disown what you own, but you can't disown what you are. I can't say, okay, I give up on myself as if I don't exist. Doesn't make any sense, right? You can't give up on yourself. You are what you are. So that pinky is part of who you are. You can't give up on that. If the Torah would have said that we don't recognize that giving up of that wallet, the Torah would be teaching us that money is part of a person. That's who you are. That's not true. Money is what you have. It's not what you are. If the Torah said you are obligated to return it, the Torah is telling you that wallet is like your pinky. And by the way, and I learned this the hard way, and I had to do some fundraising, and I couldn't understand when I first started why these millionaires, they had a hard time partying with $1,000. It means nothing to them. And somebody explained to me, Rabbi, you don't understand. For people that are so wrapped up in their money becomes who they are. You ask them to give up their pinky. That's what you ask them. We may not relate to that. But so the point is, but the Torah said that's not how I'm a doctor. That's not who you are. That's what you practice. Today, there's this blurred line that my practice is who I am. My money is who I am. No, your money is what you have. And you can do great things with money. But it's not who you are. If the Torah would have obligated to return the money, the Torah would say money is you. But no, if you sever your ties that money, like I sold that car, I have no connection. There's no legal connection with that wallet whatsoever. If the Torah said there is a legal connection, the Torah would have been telling you that money is who you are, like that pinky. But of course, in this case, morally, you should feel obligated to want to return it, because certainly for every compelling reason you should do so. But the Torah is teaching you an extremely valuable lesson about money in general. That money is what we have, and all these Mishpatim laws are about how to, and the Torah, by the way, I got to stop here. The Torah, we live in a world of consumerism. It's all about consuming. The Torah wants us to be producers. And money, when you get creative and you develop a business, that's part of being productive and creative, and that's a great thing. And the sages tell us, Adam rotza kaf shelo, a person prefers 1 bushel of his own wheat than 9 bushels that somebody might gift him. Because the Torah says people value their creativity, and that's important, right? So the Torah wants us to be creative. The Torah wants us to be producers, right? And we do great things with it, and that's how we can really extend ourselves beyond ourselves to this money and do more. But it's not who you are. It's still what you have. The Torah would be obligated to turn it. The Torah is saying money is who you are, and that would have been a terribly wrong lesson for the Torah to teach. You got that? Mm-hmm. Stop here?
Story of Lorena Bobbitt.
I understand it. Yeah, good lesson.
Right? So normally everyone's reaction is, of course, you got to return it.
Right.
But I said that's
you do have to return it, but
morally,
for different reasons.
Yes,
Right.
but I said, but that's the beauty.
Right.
Mishpatim laws, they have to come from Sinai, because human beings would never come up with that.
Rabbi, do you know what SER stands for?
Okay, Shalom Kufas.
SER, do you know what